Hello and welcome back to Read Becca for a book haul, our favorite thing where we buy books we want to read and then we never get to them. No, hopefully I will get to some of these soon. I really would like to, but I've been, as usual, slowly acquiring things. So this is the past couple months, month and a half-ish of books that I've acquired, both in print and I've got a bunch of ebooks as well. So let's dive right into the ebooks. I'm going to go through this kind of rapidly because I have a massive pile here. So the first one that I grabbed is Can't Spell Treason Without T by Rebecca Thorne. This is one I think it must have gotten some popularity on TikTok or something because I have actually seen some bigger booktubers pick this up, but it is a fantasy. It's fairly cozy, and most of these ebooks are going to be fairly cozy. It seems to follow some similar plot to A Coup of Tea that I hauled last time. But this one is about, I think, a lesbian couple who are both sort of power players, one of whom is a Queen's Guard. And they both have been wanting to take a step away from their lives and slow down, kind of find the quiet life and open a bookshop with a tea service. And they want to do that, and so they kind of flee and escape to do that. But the Queen is very cranky and I think causes problems for them. So as far as I know, that's what's going on. But they've run off to this small village in order to open a bookshop and tea store. So that sounds great. I'm all here for that kind of story. I will take every iteration. The next one is Girl Squad Volta by Maya Lin Wong, aka ML Wong. Very, very popular for having won the SPFBO competition a couple of years ago with an adult fantasy novel. This is YA. And this one is interesting. It sounds like nothing I've ever read before. It's about kind of a normal urban fantasy setting where effectively we've got a main character who's a teenage girl who her childhood friend and crush turns out to be a fairy. And so there's this whole interdimensional fairy element. The Volta are these fae. And it sounds like now this regular human is discovering that magic is real, and her crush is a magical being and gets swept up into this magical world. So that sounds like great fun. And from what I've heard, Emma Wong has written YA before, and it was very sort of plotty and action-packed. So I think this could be a fun, quick read. And then we have A Low Country by Morgan Shank. This is a weird Western. I don't know too much about it, don't want to know too much about it. Weird Westerns are usually a lot about vibes. So I think this one follows a main character who she's wanting to settle down. A lot of these have a settle down premise. She's wanting to settle down and live the quiet life. And then her town is ransacked by bandits and they kidnap her partner, who she then has to go on an adventure to save, I guess. So that sounds like a great time. I'm a big fan of the weird Western genre, so it's kind of an Old West setting with a lot of fantastic and mythical monsters around usually. So sounds like a great time. And then we have Small Town Crafter by Tom Watts. This is a lit RPG, so it has actual game elements as far as I know, and it is exactly what it sounds like. So literally we are following this guy who becomes an apprentice crafter, and I think he's an artificer specifically, if you know what that is, if you've played D&D, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to some more mundane, calm slice of life lit RPG. That's sort of what I've been craving. So yeah, I really want to get into that one. And then Under Earth Over Sky by Emily McCosh. And this is another fae novel. And it sounds like this one has maybe a little more epic stakes or more plot to it than some of these cozies. But as far as I know, this does also have cozy vibes in that we're following a fae character who's, I think, a fae king, and he finds a baby in the woods, a human baby, and he's kind of immediately won over and feels like he needs to protect this baby. So this turns out to be, I think, him protecting this baby from the harms that the fae world would do to it. So that sounds interesting and maybe a little threat, but from what I hear, it's got like great cozy vibes. And then we have actually two B books. Oddly, not intentionally, not for any reason. I think I actually got both of these for free. So just by chance, I got a double B purchase. To Hive and to Hold by Amy Crook. This one is featuring, I think, a male-male romance, perhaps, between an apothecary and a tattooist, and the tattooist is coming to the apothecary to get some sort of design, like the details of that design for someone that they're doing a tattoo on, in a fantastical world. And I think that this apothecary starts a new beehive, and they start a new life together, it sounds like. So again, with the sort of starting over vibe. So that is all I need to know. I'm in for it. The second one is Their Heart a Hive by Fox and Locke. And this one is interesting because I think it's like alt historical or adjacent to alt historical. It's in an 18th century setting, slightly gothic, but with sort of fantastical monsters in the world. And it is a queer normalized setting. So we have a genderqueer character, and I think there is sort of a class conflict element. So one of our characters is upper class aristocratic, and the other one is sort of a peasant class, and it sounds like there's going to be a romance between the two of them. So that sounds lovely. Then we have A Rival Most Vile by R.K. Ashwick, and this is probably my favorite premise on here. It's two rival potion shops in the same village who hate each other, obviously, so it's a hate to love romance between two men running their potion shops. So love that premise. It sounds so fun. Yeah, so I really want to get to that one. Next we have Johnny's Girls by Vesna Kulik. And this one I heard about, or I didn't actually hear about this book specifically. Bookworm Dreams did a video on Croatian fantasy books. And there was a different book there, but that is not available or sold in the US for whatever reason. So I just checked out another book from the author. And this one sounds very cool. It's got sort of dimensional travel and parallel universes, perhaps, where this one woman is traveling through to another dimensional world, and meets and perhaps falls for her doppelganger, who's not quite her, but it's sort of another version of her that did things she wished she would have done in her life, it sounds like. So that's an interesting premise. This is also a historical or alt history in addition to that dimensional travel, and it sounds a bit diesel punk in terms of what was discussed in the topics. And apparently it's got a major mystery plot. So that all sounds like a really fun time. So I think this is going to be a really entertaining read. And the last ebook that I have here is Daughter of the Sun by Effie Calvin. This is actually a sequel in a series that I really want to finish up, The Tales of Ithia. And I enjoyed the first book so much that I desperately want to read this. And I thought I already had the next book, but I apparently didn't. So I got the second book so that I can get back into this series. And this particular entry, these are sort of romances, but with a heavy fantastical plot as far as the first book went. So I'm assuming it's going to continue on with that. The second book stands alone from the first as far as I know, other than being in the same setting. So new characters. And here we are following a paladin who apparently she falls in love with her goddess while her goddess is trapped in a human body, and her goddess kind of recruits her to help her get untrapped out of this human body. So very interesting premises as far as this series, and I've actually heard that the second book is even better than the first one, which I loved. So really looking forward to that one as well. So that's it for the ebooks that I hauled. The next chunk of books were a UK order from Blackwell, specifically books that I could only get because they're only published in the UK, or editions that I wanted from the UK. So I got a couple of those. The first one is the one that incited the purchase. That was Babel by R.F. Kuang. So this has been all over BookTube. I wanted specifically this UK version. The other one has kind of the big tower in the middle in the US. So this one, I started reading it. I got about halfway through from the library and decided, yeah, I'm not going to try to wait in the holds line. I'm just going to buy a copy for myself because I'm really loving it. And so this is a story that's in a historical setting with a slight fantastical twist. So it is historical fantasy, where we are following a character as he's recruited from China to come and go to school at Oxford, in specifically the Tower of Babel there, where they deal with silver working in a magical way that involves linguistics. So I'm enjoying this very much. I haven't quite finished it up yet, but great book if you like historical low fantasy. Next, I have another one I have actually read, The Binding by Bridget Collins. I read this from the library and I enjoyed it so much. I was sort of holding out for the Waterstones hardcover special edition, and I've never been able to find a copy of that, unfortunately. So this UK cover is still much, much nicer. This is the paperback than the US editions. I like this a lot better than the US one. So I'm happy to have this. This is sort of a Dickensian, it feels historical, but I think it's clearly a secondary world where we have this magic of binding people's memories into books, and they're literally pulled out of the person so they don't remember that thing anymore. This also has a great male romance against the odds because it is this sort of historical setting. There's a lot of homophobia, and these two young men who are in love keep being pulled apart. So it just has really great vibes, and the feeling of atmosphere that exists in this story is amazing. The marketing was terrible because it's not the book that is really pitched usually, but it's a great book. So I'm happy to have that one because that is a book I love. And then I got two others that are new to me that I really want to read that are only available in the UK. And the first is Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death. And actually, I think both of these are poets turned authors or poets writing novels, which is always bodes well for me, I think. So Selena Godden is a poet. Apparently, I haven't read any of her poetry. And this is following Mrs. Death as she encounters a writer who becomes enamored with her and starts writing her memoir. So she's telling her life story as far as I understand. And that's about all I know. But it sounds very quirky and different. And everyone I know who has read this really loved it. So I really want to get into this. And I think this paperback version came out fairly recently, and I think it's really lovely. And then this one is a teeny tiny indie published little novella. I think it's only 100 pages, called Hex by Jenny Fagan. So this is definitely speculative-y as well. This one is following a woman who's being persecuted as a witch in the past, I think the 1500s, mid 1500s, in the UK, and she's visited by another woman who says she's come from the future, and women are still being persecuted. So I don't know any more than that, and I am really looking forward to it. As I said, this author is also a poet, and just sort of flipping through, I noticed there is a poem at the end. So I'm curious if there's going to be poetry throughout, or if it is just that little bit at the end. I didn't want to flip through too much and figure it out. I was just looking for page counts. So on to the last pile, we have my Coffee House Press subscription books that have come in recently in the past couple months. The first one, we'll start on the low note, really. This one, I don't really like this cover, or I don't like the cover at all. I like the colors to it, but I'm not a fan of modern art, and this is very abstract. So this is The Heiress / Ghost Acres by Lightsey Darst. And this is a poetry collection. So I'm not a big poetry reader, but I have actually liked the one poetry collection from Coffee House Press I did read. So I will give this a shot at least. However, it's also centering a topic that I'm not too interested in, and that is motherhood and matriarchal duty to society, it seems like. So that's not really something I'm super on board with or interested in significantly. So I'll give it a chance and see how it goes, but it may or may not stick with my collection. And then one I'm much more interested in and have not heard anything about, A Cowardly Woman No More. So this seems to be speculative sci-fi, potentially. It's something wishy-washy in that area of speculativeness. It's about a woman in her 40s who's had sort of a career where she always put forward others ahead of herself. She's been a mother and a wife, and it sounds like she just hasn't really had her adventure. And one day, her adventure finds her. So it sounds really intriguing. I love the idea of the older protagonist still finding a new beginning. That's absolutely a story trope that I love. The next ones I have are actually 2 Laird Hunt books, and they're some of the reason why I actually got my subscription to the Coffee House Press catalog. And this is Indiana, Indiana by Laird Hunt, obviously. So this one sounds interesting. Laird Hunt has been a buzzy author since award nominations recently with Zori, and this is in the same setting and includes the character of Zori as, I think, a secondary character. So I don't know how linked it is, if it's a prequel. It seems like it's it is set earlier, or if it stands on its own and just happens to have the Zori character. But regardless, this sounds really interesting. We're following a character who is dealing with the fallout of his love for his wife, who they were only married for a short time, for a few weeks, when it seems like she maybe committed arson. As you can see, the house is on fire here, and potentially she's gone away. Either she's disappeared or she's in prison. It's not clear from the cover copy, but she's not around after that short couple weeks they were married, and yet he still loves her very much. So that sounds really intriguing in terms of the story thread, and it's a short novel, so I'm looking forward to getting to that one. And then we also have a collection of essays, so nonfiction collection. This is This Wide Terraqueous World, also by Laird Hunt, and this is just a collection of essays about the writerly life. So it's another short one, but I think that sounds pretty fantastic. Laird Hunt's writing seems to be very appealing. And finally, the strangest thing on this pile, even after a lot of strange things, is The Nature Book by Tom Comita. This is really weird, and I don't know how really to describe it, because this is a collection of other people's work, and I think he introduces it here. This novel contains no words of my own. Through a process of collage and constraint, I have gathered nature descriptions from over 300 novels and arranged them into a single book. So that is the premise of this, or the project of this work. So that's interesting on its own. It's got a list of the books that are drawn from at the back, I found, and I don't know how I feel about that. It's very experimental, obviously, but he's doing something transformative to the text, it sounds like. So I'm curious to read this, because I do love a good nature writing and fiction. So if this is collecting that from these really strong nature writing stories, that could be great. And this is divided up. I noticed in the index that it's very split into what are categories. The Four Seasons, the Deep Blue Sea, the Void, and the Endless Summer are what the topics are called. I really love the back jacket copy that gives kind of the snippet of what to expect from it. The Nature Book challenges the confines of anthropocentrism with sublime artistic vision, traversing mountains, forests, oceans, and space to shift our attention toward the magnificently complex and interconnected world around us. So that's just a great, phenomenal project to me. I don't know how I feel about the idea that he's taking other people's writing and sort of transforming it potentially, but it sounds interesting. I will at least give it a try. So that is the haul. Let me know which books you have read from these, if you liked them or didn't like them, and let me know which ones you want me to get to sooner rather than later. So that is it for me today. Thank you so very much for watching.